The past few years, overshadowed by Oliver's emotional detachment, had left me craving solitude, and that day offered one of those rare opportunities for freedom. In my room, surrounded by familiar comforts, I had set up my laptop and arranged a few personal belongings around me. Before and after that particular afternoon, which seemed completely ordinary at first, turned out to be one of those pivotal moments for me. Everything had been going as usual. I was home alone with Oliver away on yet another work trip, but the upside of his absence was the opportunity to carve out some personal space, something I hadn't prioritized in years. Before James returned from university, these quiet moments were a normal part of my routine, but now they were infrequent. Unbeknownst to me, the door hadn't completely closed. Just as I started to relax, James, Oliver's son from a previous marriage, evoked responses in me that were difficult to ignore. His tall stature, sharp features, and piercing gaze had unnerved me the first time we met, but I told myself it was only a fleeting thought because he was out with friends and wouldn't return until later. This made me feel comfortable withdrawing to my room for some private time. I tried to hide what I was holding out of instinct, but it was futile. The sounds from my laptop filled the silence, and his wide-eyed gaze said it all. My body froze, unable to conceal the awkwardness, unable to mute the noise, and afraid that my heart would burst. James's expression was one of unforgettable shock and curiosity, and maybe something deeper. Unspoken tension hung in the air, maybe even longing, when I realized that my reactions weren't just embarrassment. His gaze forced me to face the emptiness I'd been holding inside for far too long. "I should have knocked," James whispered in a low, tremulous voice. He slowly backed away, never breaking eye contact, and gently shut the door behind him. I sat there stunned, unsure of what had just transpired, but certain that something between us had shifted. Something forbidden, dangerous, yet undeniably tempting. As soon as the door clicked shut, I collapsed onto the bed, burying my face in my hands. What had I done? I was 42 years old, and Oliver's son, my stepson, had caught me in such a vulnerable state. My mind replayed the scene over and over, each time amplifying a strange warmth within me, despite the overwhelming shame threatening to consume me. It wasn't just surprise in his eyes. It was something more, as if he understood me, or perhaps wanted something more. Even considering it felt wrong, almost revolting. Yet I couldn't stop. My heart raced, and the unfamiliar sensation coursing through me wasn't purely guilt. I'd noticed James's lingering glances before, the subtle expressions of interest, but I'd always dismissed them, pretending they didn't exist until now. That encounter changed everything. For the next 3 days, Oliver would still be gone, leaving only James and me in the house. I dreaded facing him. Yet beneath my fear lurked an undeniable excitement. It felt illicit, perilous, and impossible to ignore. I hoped it would end there, chalking it up to an unfortunate accident. But I had no idea what awaited me the following day. That night, sleep eluded me. The next day passed in near silence. James stayed holed up in his room, and after hastily preparing a meal, I retreated to the living room. It was as though we'd silently agreed not to acknowledge each other. Yet the air between us felt heavy, charged with unspoken energy. We both recognized, but chose to suppress. By evening, I decided to take a shower. As the warm water cascaded over me, I tried to shake off the memory of the previous day, but James's intense expression kept resurfacing. Lost in thought, I was jolted when the power suddenly went out. The water continued to flow, but darkness enveloped the room. Panic surged briefly. I quickly turned off the shower, wrapped myself in a robe, and tied it securely. Just then, I heard James's voice from the hallway. "Emma, are you okay?" he asked. "I'm fine," I replied, my voice wavering. "I think the power is out." Clutching the robe tighter, I moved toward his voice. Entering the kitchen, I couldn't see him, but his footsteps echoed nearby. "Certainly, we need to find a candle," James said, his voice tense. The faint glow from a street lamp outside barely illuminated one corner of the kitchen, while the rest remained cloaked in shadow. As we both fumbled in the dark, I accidentally stumbled into him. My shoulder hit his chest, and we froze, holding our silence. His hands instinctively went to my waist to steady me, but the gesture felt deliberate, charged with something more than just reflex. "I didn't see you," James whispered, his voice barely audible, our eyes locked in the dim light filtering through the window. The connection between us in that moment was stronger than anything I'd ever felt before. "It's okay," I murmured, though my trembling voice betrayed me. My heart thundered so loudly, I was certain he could hear it. James's gaze dropped to my mouth, his presence close as the space between us dwindled to almost nothing. "Emma," he breathed, his voice thick with emotion. I didn't want to pull away. In that instant, every boundary I'd clung to seemed to dissolve. Just then, the lights flickered back on, jolting us both out of the moment. We stepped back abruptly as if caught in the act. James moved toward the breaker box, pretending to inspect it, but I knew the weight of what had just happened lingered heavily between us. When I returned to the living room, James followed, his gaze never leaving me. And this time, there was a determined glint in his eyes. "Emma, we need to talk," he said, his tone making it clear this wouldn't be an ordinary conversation. My heart raced again as I sat across from him, the tension between us almost suffocating. We both knew this conversation had been inevitable for some time. An unspoken understanding passed between us. Nothing would ever be the same. James lowered his gaze, speaking softly. Emma, I'm sorry about yesterday. If I made you uncomfortable, it wasn't intentional. When I saw the door open, I shouldn't have looked, he said, his voice faltering as he searched for the right words. But I couldn't stop the rush of emotions his apology stirred in me. My heart raced and warmth spread across my face. Yesterday, I began trying to downplay it. I was just so embarrassed. It doesn't matter, I added quietly, though my voice lacked conviction. James sighed and leaned closer. No, it does. It's impossible not to notice, Emma. You're lonely, and that's not your fault. Tears welled up in my eyes. Hearing my loneliness articulated so plainly left me unable to deny it. I thought I had gotten used to it, I whispered. But the warmth in James's gaze encouraged me to continue. But sometimes it feels overwhelming. I don't know what to do. When James placed his hand over mine, my breath hitched. You shouldn't have to feel lonely, Emma, he said, his voice firm and resolute. Someone like you shouldn't feel this way. For a moment, I lost myself in the weight of his gesture. When I looked up at him, the sincerity in his expression was undeniable. That's when I realized this connection between us wasn't some fleeting misunderstanding. James was serious. I tried to shift the topic. I want to talk about Carly, I said, my voice steadier now. You told me you broke up, but why? James paused, then exhaled deeply. Because I haven't felt anything for her in a long time, he admitted. That relationship was over. I just couldn't admit it. I processed his words carefully. Then why now? Why end it now? I asked. For a moment, James looked away, then met my gaze again. We were so close. I could sense his presence. Because I like you, Emma, he said, his voice low but clear. Carly didn't matter anymore. You've been on my mind for a while. That's why I ended it. I opened my mouth to respond, but no words came. In that instant, James gently placed his hands on my waist and drew me nearer. We were inches apart, and I realized this wasn't just a fleeting attraction. This was a point of no return. When James finally closed the distance, it felt as though time stood still. His warmth, certainty, and the pull I felt toward him consumed me entirely. My heart raced uncontrollably, and my mind went blank. There was nothing but this moment here and now with him. At some point, the intensity of my emotions overwhelmed me, and I felt compelled to act. Slowly, I drew back just enough to steady myself. Gazing into his eyes, I whispered, I've been drawn to you for a while now. As those words left my mouth, every barrier between us crumbled. A heavy silence hung in the air, a pivotal moment where we both silently questioned how far we were willing to go. I locked eyes with him, took a deep breath, and stood up. He looked surprised, but there was an unmistakable spark of longing in his gaze. I can't bear this loneliness anymore, I said, my voice steady and resolute. I had held back for so long that stopping now felt futile. James's eyes remained fixed on me, intense and unwavering. Slowly, I untied the belt of my robe, letting it slip off my shoulders and pool at my feet. His gaze followed every movement. Without a word, I walked toward the large couch in the living room, sinking gently into its soft cushions. James didn't hesitate. One by one, he removed his clothes, placing them aside with deliberate care. Each motion felt purposeful, as if defying time itself, moving inexorably towards something inevitable. He knelt beside me, one knee resting on the couch, his hands gripping the cushions on either side of me for support. As he leaned over me, I could sense his presence, sending waves of awareness through me. When our eyes met again, he came closer. That moment wasn't just a gesture. It was an explosion of every suppressed emotion, every forbidden thought, every longing born from years of loneliness. James's hands moved to my waist, his manner tender yet confident. In that moment, something inside me stirred, something I had long forgotten. The more he continued, the more I realized how deeply I was drawn to him, savoring every sensation. Soon my body trembled, and as I closed my eyes, a soft sound escaped me. When I opened them again, I saw James's shoulders beneath my hands, his face flushed, his breathing heavy. We were both lost in the moment, completely consumed by each other. James looked elated, his affection evident as my body began to tremble once more. I dug my nails into his back. He seemed to welcome it, surrendering himself fully. A warmth spread through me, overwhelming and exquisite. Every moment with James was intoxicating, a mix of exhilaration and unease. Oliver still had a few days before returning home. And during that time, James and I crossed boundaries I never imagined I'd dare to breach. Everything felt so natural, so inevitable that the wrongness of our actions faded into the background. James filled the void. Oliver's indifference had led to this, but I knew deep down it was my choice too. Change. Extended resolution with themes of forgiveness and personal growth. When Oliver returned, the guilt crashed over me like a wave. I couldn't hide it forever. One evening, I confessed everything, tears streaming, expecting the worst. Oliver was devastated, but instead of immediate rage, he listened. We've both been distant, he admitted, his voice breaking. I pushed you away without realizing. We decided on therapy, not just for us, but for the family. James, racked with remorse, joined sessions too. It was messy, painful, but honest. Over months, we rebuilt. Oliver and I rediscovered our love, setting boundaries and prioritizing each other. James moved out to focus on his studies, and we all worked on forgiveness. I started journaling, turning my pain into stories that helped others facing loneliness. Today, our family is stronger, scarred but healed. Breaking my vows was my lowest point, but it taught me resilience, the value of communication, and that forgiveness starts with forgiving yourself. It's not an excuse, but a lesson. From ashes, growth can rise.